Nice. Okay. Well, welcome to Real Estate with Jess and Brandon.
We had to change the name.
We did have to change the name.
That's a story for another day.
Yeah. Someone was upset because they used a similar name in a very faraway place. So.
So, anyways.
Yeah, Real Estate with Jess and Brandon. Today we're going to talk about what are some of the best things you think that a homeowner can do to their house, like renovations, and some of the worst things that you see people do to their house. So if you're going to someone's house, like, oh, I just did this, or I'm thinking about doing this, or putting on a new deck, or doing the roof, or whatever they're going to do, what do you think would be some of the best things you think people could do?
So typically bathrooms, kitchens, and landscaping are the biggest things, right? Aside from that, though, I think people should not forget to take care of the rest of it. So, for example, even just a fresh coat of paint throughout the house, making sure the baseboards are all, clean and together. Smaller things like light fixtures, cleanliness, and decluttering can go a long way.
Yep.
So bathrooms, kitchen, biggest thing, some landscaping, but you want to make sure that, you don't have a really nice kitchen and a really nice bathroom, but the whole house needs a paint job.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, imagine you go into a house where kitchen's completely brand new, but then you go in the living room and it's like that skinny hardwood from 1950s, and it's like shag carpet in the other bedroom that's pink, and then you have like bright yellow walls and light fixture. It looks like it's from 1963 that's somehow still working and flickering in the distance. Like, that wouldn't be consistent, right? So I think it's really key to make sure the whole house is pretty consistent, or at least the whole level. So if it's like a bungalow with a finished basement, at least focus on like the main level. If the basement's a lot different, not a huge deal. But you can only work with what you got. So if you don't have a huge budget or a lot of desire to like do these things, and that's okay. And I think you should then resort back to the first thing that you should always do when you're selling, which you said, which is decluttering. Because you're going to move out anyways, and it's not a renovation. You're just like boxing things up, going to Home Depot, getting boxes, and packing everything up to go to the next house. So if you can do that, I always say think of it as like a model home in terms of the ideal, how you want it to show. Now, you don't have to get to like model home showness in terms of being like completely almost vacant, and like you have like little grapes in a bowl on the counter and a little toaster, and that's basically on your entire kitchen counter. Like, you can have more stuff than that. But it's wherever you want to draw that line. And the more you can get to that, I think the better, because it's not much cost. So if you could check that box off, that your house is very decluttered and the pictures are going to show great because it shows the overall space really well, then you can get on to, like you said, paintings, probably the next best thing I would say, because it's not much cost. I was actually just in a house the other day where like the house needed a good paint. It's like all bright yellow, like throughout. It's consistent, but it's not a good color. So I think like doing kind of a neutral or a white or something really would help. What are some of the things that you've seen that you're like, oh, you did that, like maybe that wasn't the best way to spend money?
Yeah, so I've been in some houses where, they'll say they have a budget of, like, say they're like, our max budget to improve the house is $3,000. We're thinking about putting in a backsplash. And then I look through the house and I'm like, a backsplash would be a nice feature, but this entire house needs to be painted. And maybe a new vanity in the bathroom because that one's broken.
Yeah.
So sometimes people need help from a professional seeing with a fresh set of eyes what makes sense for them to do. Mm-hmm. So often, like, we'll do that for clients, right? Where we go there and give them advice on that. Because if they only have, a limited budget to be able to spruce the house up before it goes on the market, we want to make sure that they're putting that towards what we think makes the most amount of sense. So, like the backsplash example, it might not make so much sense when your entire house needs a repaint, and you're going to get more, or it's going to add more value freshening up the house with paint versus putting in a backsplash.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that like a backsplash is a good thing to do to up value, but if it's one thing and everything else looks not that great, then it's not really gonna like it'll be kind of, it's not consistent, right? You want the whole house to kind of give it a vibe or an experience when someone's walking through it. And if you declutter the whole house, that's the whole house. If you paint, you're painting pretty much the whole house, keeps it consistent. But then I would say, if you focus on kitchen and bathrooms as the next two rooms that are like the best rooms to put money into, then in the kitchen doing backsplash or countertops. Cabinets can be kind of pricey, but still, if it costs you $10K, you could up value by 15, 20 on something like that on cabinets. But then maybe focusing on light fixtures, make sure they're all consistent, because they're not too expensive, and you can just walk through your house, count them all up, go to Home Depot, Hampton Bay flush mounts, put them up. So if you like declutter, paint, do the light fixtures, maybe do the backsplash if you have extra money left over. Go into the bathroom, see if you could get a new vanity. Maybe look at flooring too. But the issue with flooring is like typically if you do it here, and it's not the same flooring as over here, it kind of can look funny if it doesn't go with it. Or you have to change baseboard if it's like you're removing carpet to do the flooring, and then you're going into the living room, which you didn't really have the budget for. You just wanted to do the kitchen flooring, but you want to keep the flooring all consistent. So sometimes it doesn't work out to do flooring because of those reasons. But yeah, I'd say those are kind of like the best places to focus on. I would say like the worst, some of the worst things I would say are actually the things that should be important in a house, like doing a roof, putting in a new furnace, doing an air conditioning unit, like all the mechanical stuff. Unless those things are like really needed, and if they are needed, it's probably smart to do so that way when whoever buys the house doesn't have a reason to be like, oh, I gotta put a new furnace in or a new roof, like let's knock off $15,000 or $10,000 off the price because I got a budget for this. But if you do a new roof or furnace and you spend this much money, you're not going to up the value by this much and make extra.
Right, yeah.
So it's like there's no profit there. It's kind of just checking off a box like the house has what people are looking for to like transact instead of like fight you on the price.
Those things are kind of expected. Like you would expect that you don't need to do the furnace right away or the roof right away. Even if they're getting up there in age, unless you're buying a brand new house, you're not always going to get newer of those things. But in terms of the consistency, I think it's important to have it flow nicely because, yeah, like you were saying, if the kitchen is absolutely amazing and new, but the rest of the house isn't looking so great, it's going to take away from all of the upgrades they've done in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be high-end things throughout, right? Just fresh coat of paint, nice light fixtures, touching up any damage. And then in terms of outside, because landscaping can get quite expensive, sometimes all it is making sure all the weeding is done, the grass is cut, decks and patios are, set up nicely and cleaned off. And even just getting a few planters from like Home Depot or something like that can go a long way. So, and not having garbage and wood and stuff like that all like scattered around the property.
Yeah, like declutter even the outside. I'd say like that first picture when someone sees the house is so important because then they're like, oh, I like it and the price. Let's go through the rest of the pictures. Or they're like, yeah, and they just go to the next house, right? They don't want to go through the rest. Kind of like judging a book by its cover. So, some things too, I'd say that aren't the best things you could do. You got to be very careful with like bedrooms. What I mean by that is like, I'll use my parents' house as an example. So it's a raised bungalow. You walk in, there's 3 bedrooms on the main level, and it's basically like you walk through bedroom, bathroom, and then you get into like a big open space, but it's not that big. So if you remove this 3rd bedroom, you can make it really open, but then you only have 2 bedrooms on the main level. So sometimes I'll hear people be like, oh, we're thinking about like taking this wall down or doing this to open it up, and I'll lose that bedroom. We don't really need it. It's just a guest room. We can put that in the basement, and then we'll just have the 2 bedrooms on the main level. The only thing with doing that would be anyone who has a family, especially with more than one kid, it's usually a deal breaker to not see a house if there's not 3 bedrooms on one level at least. Right, that's true. So you're really narrowing down your buyer pool by doing that. That I'd be like, I don't know, is it worth like getting a bigger living room? Because it's more spacious, but you're losing in a huge portion of the market because they wouldn't even buy the house if they don't have 3 beds on the same level. A lot of bungalows are like that because a lot of them are 3 beds on one level. Right. So it depends how it's laid out, but just always being aware of like how many bedrooms your house has, removing one, because it correlates so much to the value. Like how often do you see a 2-bedroom house that's worth $800,000? Like very rare. But if it's 4 or 5 beds, there's most of them that are $800K probably are 4 or 5 beds. So you never really want to start removing bedrooms typically, but sometimes it can make sense.
And well, also too, I think that I know furnaces and roofs and all that stuff, they're important, but some people will try and or feel that all of the value is from that. So, you'll go there and they'll say like, we just put a brand new roof on. Yeah. The house around the corner that you're saying is comparable to ours has an old roof. Yeah. When the buyers are looking at the house, they do care about the roof, but there's many other things that have to check the boxes for them. Yeah. So I wouldn't put all your, thought and energy just into that unless it needs to be done. It's important, obviously, because there's so many other things that they're looking at, like the yard size, the bedrooms, the updates inside, oftentimes they feel, they're not happy if the roof is old or the furnace is old, but they're kind of expecting or not shocked by it if the house isn't brand new, right?
Yeah. I find if you could that's why there's pros and cons, right? Doing like a pre-list home inspection, but just knowing, think of it as like structurally, mechanically, and then the finishes. So structurally, mechanically, hopefully there's no structural issues because that's never ideal. But mechanically, like you're saying, roof, furnace, AC, hot water tank, electrical, plumbing, all those things. People just want that to be working and good, and hopefully they don't have to replace any of those things anytime soon because it just falls under the category of maintenance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like if they can just be like, no maintenance on this house, it's good for the next 5 years, that's nice. If they're like, oh, I gotta do this next year or two, they might be like, maybe our offer should be a little bit less because we gotta do a new roof or whatever. So like you're saying, people just expect it to be okay. So if you're putting money into it, only I would say you only should be doing that if it's a true deficiency and it needs to be done. And sometimes just take the hit, meaning like maybe just because your furnace is old, you don't replace it and make it new if it still works okay.
Right.
Like you're usually advised to do that. But just be aware that someone might be like, it's an old furnace, so we're not going to come in here on price. We're going to be a little bit lower to offset that. And it just is what it is. Take the hit on it. Yeah. So just kind of trying to focus on and like you're saying, I've met a lot of people where they see that, like they've done all those things and they're like, oh, it's worth here because I got a new roof, I got all these new things. But it's like, it's more just people expect it and like they'll buy it now versus them having any reason to not buy it, but they're not going to necessarily pay you a premium for it just because it has those things that people sometimes they don't realize that.
Yeah.
It's more like putting it into those cosmetics, the painting, the decluttering, the kitchen, the bathrooms, those 2 rooms especially, and light fixtures, that kind of stuff. That's where I'd say like your money will go the farthest for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen anyone do anything really stupid to their house where it's like, why'd you do that?
Probably lots, over the years.
Nothing really sticks out though.
I don't think I'm really shocked by anything anymore.
So I know,
can't even think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, for sure, I get it.
Random additions and things they didn't get permits for and things that don't make sense, or they had other plans years ago and that's changed, and unfinished projects and things like that. But
yeah. No, for sure. Sweet. Good talking with you, Jess.
You too.